Good evening, everybody, and welcome to an interactive seminar which has been titled HIV Testing, What Are Your Risks? And this education has been developed by your RACGP with funding from the New South Wales Ministry of Health. I'm Michael Johnston, I'm a GP from North Sydney, and I have the honour of being your facilitator for tonight. And I'm joined by our colleagues, Dr. Wally Jamal, Dr. Louise Tomlins, and Dr. Miriam Grotowski, and a very special guest, Abby Landy. And together, we'll be presenting a program that not only helps you identify and reduce the barriers to increased HIV testing, but also will assist you when you find a positive diagnosis. Before we start, I'd like to make an acknowledgement to country where we recognise the traditional owners of the land on which we live and work. So let's run a quick poll by a show of hands. How many of you in the audience have diagnosed a patient with HIV? Now keep your hand up and add to that if you've inherited a patient with HIV from another practitioner. Okay, a few more. And finally, could you show hands if you regularly test for HIV? Okay, basically everybody in the room. All right, so why are we here? Why this particular program and why tonight? Although Australia remains a relatively low prevalence country with regards to HIV, with a fairly concentrated epidemic, the rates of infections are at the highest they've been over the past 20 years, and that rate of infection continues to increase. And about 10% of patients don't realise that they're infected with the virus. So some state and national HIV strategies have outlined some targets, and these targets include halving the rate of sexual transmission of HIV by the end of this year, 2015, with the eventual aim of eradicating HIV by 2020. So what needs to happen to meet these goals? Well, firstly, the rate of HIV testing needs to double. And secondly, the rate of coverage with antiretroviral therapy needs to be at around about 95%. Currently, it's at around about 70% of patients who are infected with the virus. And some key steps have already been taken to help try and achieve these goals. Many of you would know that the CD4 criterion for access to subsidised antiretroviral therapy has been removed. And secondly, a number of the barriers to testing for HIV have also been removed, and that is relevant to us as GPs. But we all realise that there are still barriers in general practice to both treating and testing for HIV, and this is critical for not only the health of the individual, but also to prevent transmission of the virus. So would anybody like to assist me in listing some of the barriers that they feel exist in general practice to either testing or treating HIV? Well, this is the fourth face-to-face presentation that we've done, and some of the other audience have sort of volunteered answers to this question, including broaching the topic, as was mentioned, taking a sexual history, some of the difficulties with that, breaking bad news. We often do that. The availability of the Section 100 drugs, and we've got Miriam Grotowski and Louise Tomlins, who are both S100 prescribers, and they can shed some light on the availability of those medications. But also the usual bugbears of general practice, such as time, and if it's not the presenting complaint. It's common complaints, aren't they? So let's have a look at the learning outcomes or objectives for tonight, and they include we want to identify a wider group of patients for HIV testing within our patient populations. We want to encourage all sexually active adults with partner change to be screened annually, to manage the real and perceived barriers to screening for HIV. We want to recognise the need for taking a sexual health history for more patients, and develop a system for at-risk patients for recall who require regular HIV testing. Okay, so our first speaker is Dr. Wally Jamal, and many of you here would know Wally. He's a local GP, and He's a senior medical advisor for Avant as well, the medical defence organisation. Wally has acted as an independent GP expert for a number of boards and tribunals over the years, and he's also completed a Masters of Health Law at Sydney University. And Wally will be talking about the risks associated with not testing from a medico-legal perspective. So please join with me in welcoming Dr. Wally Jamal.